Hello everyone and welcome to my Creative African Cooking channel in Ndudu by Fafa, and my name is Fafa.
So typically on Sundays in Ghana, one would have their preferred soup with their preferred carbohydrates. Now today I'm going to talk about groundnut soup, but of course I've done that recipe already. So I'm like, what else can I make with groundnut soup? I'm like, yep, I've got it. Because in as much as we all have a similar dish, we cook it differently. And I'm going to Senegal today, and I'm going to try their Maafe recipe, which is the peanut butter or groundnut stew, may I say. It's incredible, Ankasa. Let's start. Now for this incredible recipe, I'll be using lamb shanks. You can use your beef if you choose. It's not a problem. And to that, I've got loads of garlic. I've got the green chilies for that aesthetic look anyway. And a habanero chili. I'm using red onions. You can use your normal white onions. And I've got some ginger. I've blended 4 tomatoes and added 2 tablespoonfuls of my tomato puree. And I've got 2 tablespoonfuls of my whole peanut butter. I will go through the rest of the ingredients as I go along. Now these ingredients so far, you can get them readily from most supermarkets, definitely, or your local grocers. Anyway, so I'm going to brown my lamb shanks. Now the reason why I'm browning it is to give it that caramelized flavor and that sort of bitter coffee flavor as well. That just adds that extra infusion to the dish. So I'm using my coconut oil and I'm just going to brown this. This will take about 10 to 12 minutes, and of course it will be on a high heat because I want that beautiful caramelized flavor. And I also like the meat to have that sealed look to it, and it's just beautiful. Anyway, so repeat this process until you've browned your meat completely, as you can see here. Whilst my meat is browning perfectly, I've preheated my oven to 180 degrees. I've peeled some potatoes, cut it into beautiful chunks. I've added some coconut oil and I'm going to roast these for about 35 minutes to give it that caramelized flavor as well. So I think my meat is ready. It just looks beautiful for me to start my recipe. Now, one thing about Maafe is I noticed there are different ways of making it. So I was like, you know what? Let me just do the Ndudu way. Why not? So I'm using the rest of the fat that I did brown the lamb shanks in as my base here. And to that, I'm going to add my onions, and I'm going to fry my onions for about 3 to 5 minutes on that medium heat. And as I said, you can use your white onions, not a problem, or some shallots. Don't restrict yourself, and but I had the red onions, and so that's what I used. It's about improvising. Now the next thing is my garlic, and I'm going to crush it. Crushing the garlic in the pestle and mortar is more of like a kitchen thing. You can use your food processor, it's not a problem if it makes it easier for you. But I've got that desired texture. I just liked it this way. I didn't want it to be too smooth, but that's my personal preference anyhow. So I'm going to add my garlic to my onion mixture, and I'm going to fry this for about 2 minutes. Reason is I just want that infusion to take place. I don't want the garlic to burn. Yes, that's so important. And then again, if you're cooking on that medium heat that I always talk about, it means that your dishes are going to be infusing perfectly. You know what I mean? So at this point, I'm using half of my chopped green chilies just to allow that infusion to take place and for that residual heat to actually permeate through this mixture, because at each stage of cooking you're enhancing the natural flavors of all the ingredients that you're incorporating. So I'm just like, yep, and I'll be using the remaining half to garnish this when it's almost ready. Now I have blended my tomatoes here, and I've got my tomato puree, and inclusive of the tomato that I blended, I did add my habanero chili. So I'm just mixing everything together now, and I'm going to fry this beautiful mixture for about 10 to 15 minutes, yet again on that medium to low heat. Because as I said, when you're cooking, it's all about cooking at the right temperature and infusing the natural flavors and enhancing it. You've got to take the time to make sure it cooks perfectly, because if you're going through the hassle of preparing everything and cooking everything, then you better do it well. There's some days you can do some shabu thing, but I think this is one of those dishes that yeah, you got to take your time with it. I love the flavors anyway. I can't wait. Yeah. Now for that umami taste and for that flavor, I'm using some fish sauce here, which is tangy and it gives it that umami flavor that this dish requires. In the absence of that, you can use a little bit of lemon juice if you wish, or you can use the fermented locust beans, but just a little bit because you need that umami flavor for this. It just lifts this dish up. Preferably if you can get the fish sauce, yes, go for it. That's like the best option, I think. And I loved it. Absolutely. Now, at this point, I don't know what prompted me to transfer my whole peanut paste into the pestle and mortar and try and pound it. Like, where did I even come from? Now, when I say the whole peanut butter paste, it's because it's organic and they've blended with the skin in it. So, yes. That's just great for me, but you can use any other peanut paste or groundnut paste that you have access to. And I think my tomato mixture just looks great because bear in mind, this is like, it's a peanut stew. So yeah, absolutely. So at that point, I was like, nah, silly decision. So I transferred the peanut paste into my blender with the ginger, added a bit of water, and I blended it into this beautiful, smooth and silky consistency, as you can see here. Obviously is the easiest choice to make. So I'm now adding this beautiful mixture to my tomato mixture, and I'm going to mix everything together till it's well combined, as I always say. At this point, I'm adding my salt to taste, as I always do, and thankfully I have filmed it this time round. Yes. And now my sauce is ready for me to place my lamb shanks in, because I'm going to be slow cooking this, and this infusion is just going to be like, you know, friends for life. Stop singing. No, singing doesn't work with this. And you can see how beautiful this is. And the beauty of the clay pot comes into being. As much as like you've got loads of sauce here, it's going to regulate that temperature. It's going to cook it perfectly for me, which means that the lamb shank is just going to cook perfectly and it's just going to break off the bone just so. So after about 20 minutes, I'm just checking and I can see that the sauce is thickening up perfectly. And sooner or later, you'd notice that the oil will settle at the surface. And that's just incredible. So 15 minutes later, I do check it again to make sure the bottom is not catching and everything is cooking perfectly. And I'm going to be cooking this for a further 40 minutes. That would allow the lamb shank to soften and just be so. Now, of course, the cooking time would be less if you are using like cubed meat. Then yes, it cooks quicker in that respect. But of course, I'm using the lamb shanks here. Oh, yes, you do. So I've mixed everything and I think that I've just tasted it and it's just on point. So I've now got my roasted potatoes. That's got that caramelized sort of nutty flavor because I did roast it in coconut oil. And I'm just adding this to this mixture and it's just beautiful. Because what happens is the sauce actually infiltrates into or permeates into the potatoes, and that just makes it so yummy. You know, it makes it like just filled with flavor and it's just slightly crusty and firm on the surface, but just nice and moist and juicy in the middle as you do. Now you can see my sauce is definitely done. It's reduced. My stew is coming up. I'm coming up. If you have been following my cooking channel, then you know at this stage, this is where it starts raining onions and shenanigans, you know, to revive that flavor. And I love that crunchiness. And I do have some garden eggs that were frozen that I'm throwing in. You can use aubergine, you can add a little bit of carrot, you can use your sweet potatoes as well, not a problem. Or get some cabbage and infuse it all to it. But I think the potatoes and the onions and the garden eggs were more than enough for me because, of course, I'm going to be serving this with rice. Now, you know I did mention that I used half my green chili earlier, and now I've got the remaining half because this is where my shenanigans start, as always. So adding that little bit of color and je ne sais quoi to it, I'm just adding my green chilies, and that just makes it aesthetically pretty. You know what I mean? And of course, it does add that residual heat again, of course, to the dish. And I'm going to mix this together till it's well combined, as I always say. as I say, this is not any other food. This is Ndudu by Fafa. And I'm just inspired by what is around me. And yeah, Ghana, we make the peanut butter soup or the groundnut soup. And in Senegal, they have the Maafe, which is the peanut butter stew. They're quite similar, but of course, with the Maafe, it has this tanginess, which comes from either the fish sauce or you add in your lemon juice or whatever to it. And I think that helps because it works because, peanut butter can be fatty. And so by adding that sort of lemon juice or that sort of citrusy infusion or the fish sauce, it cuts through that greasiness and it just makes it so. Now, of course, I had to serve this with my jasmine rice that I cooked in my wacha leaf. I'll leave that recipe at the top because that's just so aromatic. And that infusion, so you can see this. You get in this beautiful sort of like wacha leaf infused jasmine rice, and then it's served with this beautiful sort of like, nutty but slightly tangy Maafe stew. Now, but then no go where. Then I get into Dubai Fafa. But then just I know you now. We can't say into Dubai Fafa. Nya grow. She did not so no be in who skirmishes. She. Me so ukwe juma wa bread now call back now. Pursue ye duania. No ye duania. Nice what's now to say. Or him man no him now ye nice wedi. Unanin ko. Yeah, mikata mikpana flow. Kana vai doma na vako na jiwa na washabu shabu. Kumukwe shabu na washabu shabu. Adoli akwa na want to do a final hana bobo nai na dri. Kada dri na nama konta na nyabere ha. Dama wa mawe flow. The rest is just shenanigans. I've got my spring onions that I've chopped that I'm sprinkling over it, and also sprinkle a little bit of some dry herbs on top of it. Be creative. And at this point, I was like, look, let me just add my red chili. So I just sliced a little bit of red chilies because, it's all about the flavor, but also how it looks, Food has to be inviting to the eye. Your mouth has to water whilst you're looking at it. And then your tongue should ting because you can't wait to have that first bite. Now, I hope I have given you that reason to click the subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. And the notification button, which means that each time I upload a video, you are notified of it and you do not miss a thing. Notification gang, thank you guys so much for your love and your encouragement. Naturally, I'd leave the list of ingredients and measurements on my blog in ndudubyfafa.blogspot.com, so do check it out. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat as Ndudu by Fafa. Until next time, be you, be nice, be beautiful. Ensure that you are honoring in your talent, what makes you unique. Copying somebody else's or following somebody else's footstep is just you following somebody else's dream and not your dream. So yes, be authentic, be you, be original. Until next time, take care, bye.